You're watching a Google Hangout with Missouri House Communications, and this is Mike Lear speaking with the Speaker of the Missouri House, Todd Richardson at Poplar Bluff. Todd, thanks for joining me this morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're going to talk about the veto session, which, as you and I talk, is coming up on Wednesday, just a few days from now. And obviously that's what most folks' minds are on after some of the legislation that passed in the past session, wondering what of the bills Governor Nixon vetoed will be taken up. But I think it's worth noting, too, as we get rolling here, Todd, that a lot of eyes are going to be on the Senate with maybe one of the most controversial bills over there in Senate Bill 656, that being an omnibus piece of firearms legislation. And with that being maybe the most contentious bill in the session, Todd, do you expect, first of all, to get that, but are you concerned that we could see the Senate locked up, and what could that mean for the House if that happens?
Well, I think as we look at veto session, obviously the Senate bills have to start over in the Senate, but I anticipate the Senate will be able to get 656 over to us, and I expect that the House will be able to override the veto. This is a bill that while it seems to be getting a lot of attention in the press and is heralded as the most controversial bill of the session, it's important to remember that this is a bipartisan piece of legislation. It's a piece of legislation that the Democrat nominee for governor said wasn't particularly that big of a deal. And I think it's a piece of legislation that's really in line with the basic, philosophical principles of protecting and defending the Second Amendment that this legislature has been very intent on protecting and upholding. So I don't think we're going to see anything out of line with that at veto session, and I expect the legislature will be able to override the veto.
All right. There's been, as you said, a lot of attention on that piece of legislation, and some of that has been a media campaign. You see a lot of things popping up on social media, and you hear from various groups. Obviously, there are groups out there that are opposed to certain firearms laws expansions and rights expansions. You've seen law enforcement groups out there. What do you think about some of what is being said out there about this being dangerous for law enforcement, dangerous for Missourians?
Well, we're certainly mindful of those concerns, and we don't take them lightly. But I think if you look overall at what 656 does, it allows law-abiding citizens the ability to enjoy their Second Amendment rights. And we certainly in the Missouri legislature have a deep respect and appreciation for what law enforcement does, and we're always going to look for ways that we can improve public safety, improve the safety specifically of our law enforcement officers. But I think in this instance, this is a case where you really have to look at the philosophical underpinnings of what the Second Amendment is there for, and it's there to allow citizens the ability to defend themselves, and it's there for law-abiding citizens to have that ability to defend themselves. So nothing about this bill is going to somehow make it easier for criminals to get firearms or to use firearms. In fact, it's quite the contrary.
All right. Perhaps the bill that's getting the most attention along with that, as far as the veto session, certainly probably the House bill getting the most attention, is House Bill 1631, voter photo ID. Is that, first of all, is that a bill that you anticipate being able to override the veto of?
I do anticipate we'll override the veto. This has been an effort that we've worked on for a number of years in the legislature, and I think we've seen just in this past primary the reason why it's so important to have protections in place to protect the integrity and the sanctity of our election system. Photo ID is a common sense proposal for most Missourians. It's something, when every Missourian has to use an ID to open a bank account or get on an airplane, they don't understand why we wouldn't require that similar kind of requirement in something as important as our election system. So this is a bill that's enjoyed overwhelming support from my Republican caucus in the legislature, and I expect we'll have the votes to override the veto.
Couple of it, as I said, we've talked about a couple of bills that maybe are getting the most attention from the media and just in general conversations on social media. But there are a lot of other pieces of legislation out there, a couple of those dealing with agriculture issues. One of those is a Senate bill that would allow disaster payments to farmers to be non-taxable. and also one dealing with animal data collection. I know those are, because of their impact on agriculture, are important issues for you.
Sure. Agriculture's the largest industry in the state. It's a driver of our state's economy, and not just in rural Missouri, but it's a big driver of the economy in our cities as well. So we are always looking for ways that we can support and improve the economic climate for Missouri's farmers and ranchers, and I think these bills are in line with those efforts.
What do you think about the governor's argument in vetoing Senate Bill 641 that it's going to be part of, and he lumped that in with a couple of other bills saying it could cost the state another $60 million. We're already tight on the budget, as you know, with revenues having been slow. Is that figure accurate? Do you think that those are that bill needs to go ahead and be moved through for the sake of farmers?
Well, there are certainly those that don't believe that the governor's number there is accurate. But we're going to be, as we look at that whole suite of bills, we're going to be very mindful of the fiscal impact, and it's something we're going to discuss as a caucus when we get back in Jefferson City next week, and we'll determine how we're going to proceed. But this legislature has an extraordinary record of being fiscally conservative and making sure that we're doing a good job of managing the taxpayers' money. And I don't think our approach on these pieces of legislation are going to be any different.
Do you have in mind some what you would consider key bills, or do you anticipate to just take up the whole slate of bills that were vetoed? Obviously, it's up to the sponsors of those bills what to bring up, but what kind of discussions have you had about what you want to see?
I think most of our sponsors are intent on trying to make an attempt at overriding the veto of their bills, and I think we'll take up quite a few of the House bills that the governor vetoed. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what the Senate sends over to us and what their sponsors intend to do. But I think you'll see a number of bills overridden the same way we've had in other veto sessions. And I think those bills that we're going to put into law are going to be common sense things that help make the state of Missouri a better place to live, work, and raise a family. And that's our goal every day in the House. And I think our efforts next week will be in line with those goals.
And you referenced the last few legislative sessions, the last few veto sessions. Obviously, this governor and the legislature have clashed on a number of issues when it comes to vetoes and overrides. Talk about your experience serving in this legislature, working with Governor Nixon in terms of this relationship, the vetoes specifically.
Well, look, I would always welcome a closer relationship with the chief executive of the state. And, there are issues on which we have been able to find some common ground and work very well together on. But there are also another, whole set of issues that we haven't been able to find that common ground and work together on. But this is the process our Constitution intended. It's the basic balance of power between three co-equal branches of government. And I think you're going to see us exercise that power when we get back next week. And
is it significant to you that he has been called the most overridden governor in Missouri history?
Well, I think it's reflective of the fact that we have some deep philosophical divides, but I also think it's reflective of the fact that we have a governor who has not been as engaged with the legislature as governors in years past. And I can think of a number of things we've overridden over the course of my career in the House that probably could have been avoided if the governor had worked with us during regular session to address some of his concerns. We're going to not look backwards, but we're going to look forward, and we're going to first focus on the next week in the veto session, and then we're going to turn our attention to a really robust agenda for January.
And let me ask you briefly about that. Once we get Wednesday in the books and you're able to look past the veto session, obviously you've got an election to contend with as well, but where does your attention shift? What do you expect to look ahead to in January?
Well, I think the thing that we hear most consistently, and the thing that's on the minds of Missourians is we've got to get our economy moving at a faster pace than it is today. We consistently lag behind our counterparts in the country on GDP growth. We have consistently lagged behind in terms of wage growth. And so we're going to start tackling some of the issues that we think can help get this economy moving again, and an economy that moves in a way that helps all Missourians. One that's allowing that allows Missourians to earn more income and hopefully to build a better life themselves. Those are the things I think Missourians want us to focus on. There'll be a whole other range of issues as it relates to the budget and trying to get a lot of social entitlement spending that's been increasing every single year, trying to get that cost under control. But I anticipate we're going to have a very successful legislative session. We're going to work really hard between the veto session and our start in January to make sure we're ready to go on day one.
All right. What's your prediction for Wednesday? We start at noon. How early do you think both chambers will be done?
I won't make any predictions on time. I'll leave that to others. But we'll be here. We'll be there as long as it takes to complete the work that Missourians expect us to do and pay us to do. But whether that's Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, or later, I'll leave that for others to speculate.
All right. Todd Richardson, Missouri Speaker of the House. Thanks for joining me on this Google Hangout.
Mike, thanks.
And this is Mike Lear from Missouri House Communications.